Coffee Break Podcast es el resultado de cientos de cafés que me he tomado con gente extraordinaria para aprender de ellos. Y un día dije, ¿por qué no grabarlos? Entrevistaré a emprendedores y líderes que nos contarán de sus historias, nos darán tips de mentalidad y hablaremos de cómo han solucionado el gran paradigma de vivir para trabajar, para convertirlo en trabajar para vivir. Soy Camila Cortés y en este espacio te invito a que te tomes también el café o el té con nosotros y fluyas. Okay. Hello, everyone. How are you? We are here in another coffee break podcast. This time, the version is in English, so I'm really excited. And we are here with Patrick Trevino. He is co-host of the podcast Layover. He is co-founder of Mind and Social Community, and he is vice president of TRAX Analytics. So welcome, Patrick. Thank you very much for this space. And yes, let's keep flowing and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be able to chat with you, and it's been really cool getting to know you as well. Most importantly, I got my coffee. So
Perfect. Me
I
too.
lived up to the theme of what you guys have going on. But first, and again, I would like to say too, thanks again. Just thank you for having me on. And I went back and listened to a lot of your previous episodes, and you're doing an amazing job with the podcast. Very good guests coming on, so I really feel honored to be part of it.
Thank you.
So who the heck am I? That's a good question, right? Yeah, as you mentioned, I am Patrick Trevino. I am the co-host of the Layover podcast with my co-host Tracy Davis, who also is part of the Mind and Social. She is the co-founder as well of Mind and Social with myself, and I serve as the executive vice president to TRAX Analytics, being a large analytical platform that does X, Y, and Z for a lot of aviation customers, sports, and entertainment. Myself, well, I was born in the beautiful city of Miami. Somehow ended up in the cold world of New Hampshire, maybe 2 hours from the Canadian border. So that's a massive, drastic change in my life. But my family descent is from Ecuador. So I am half Ecuadorian, half Puerto Rican, and yeah, I've been in aviation my whole life. I studied business, but studied more of the science of business, focusing on project management, data analytics, operations. That was kind of the core. Finished undergrad school, and then somehow ended up in the cold world of New Hampshire. And today it is um 15 degrees Fahrenheit right now outside. So I'm definitely staying inside for most of the day. That's the beginning of winter. It's not even winter yet. And then went to grad school. I got a degree in environmental studies. I really wanted to focus all of my data experience, all of my ability to run large projects in the environmental space. And somehow that brought me into aviation. And in parallel, I worked for a facility management firm. From there, joined a team that started its own facility management firm that focused a lot, mostly in aviation and large venues. And we grew that very successfully for about 9 years or 10 years, but who's counting? Don't want to age myself here. Um, and then from there, I had an opportunity to see. I was very intrigued of what Tracy was doing over at TRAX Analytics. It's funny, I was actually buying the product for a customer, and then saw the value when it was going, and then joined in, became partners in that, and really homed in on what they were doing, and it was kind of married everything together, right? It had that facility management side of things. It had aviation, which they were really large in, but it also had the data side of things. And it also helped me tap into my environmental studies, which is something that I'm very passionate about. So growing it from sustainability practices, um, environmental needs, it really put everything into an ecosystem for me personally. And it was the perfect marriage, right? It was what I was passionate about, what I loved, and I put those two things together, and here I am in front of you having coffee, discussing it.
That's amazing. Yes, like you managed to join like your function, like where were you good at, and your passion. So I think that's a really great combination, and not all the people get to do that. But yes, I wanted to ask you. You said that environmental science ecosystem, it's your passion, right? How did you discover this passion or this calling? Like there was a moment of your life, or you just knew it, and that's it.
Yeah, no, you know what? They're actually, I don't want to sound cliche like, oh, there was a, you know, the sun came through the clouds and it was like, this is the one thing you're gonna do, right? That's not what happened. I actually growing up in New Hampshire, you tend to do a lot of things outdoors. A lot of things in nature, a lot of things out, well, we like to say out in the woods. But I've always had a passion for being outdoors, whether that be snowboarding, whether that be hiking, spending time in the woods, camping, um, just really being outside. And New Hampshire is a beautiful state that takes environmental very, very serious. So a lot of stuff from deforestation and those things are heavily regulated in the state. And I actually remember this. I was I was homeschooled for high school, and so when the pandemic happened, not to get sidetracked, and working from home, I was like, well, I've been learning from home since I was 16, so this is just normal for me. And I would always go outside to go on hikes because it was my break throughout the day, right? It was like everybody went in high school to gym class. I went to go hike in the woods because that was my activity for the day. And I walked through this one area, and what was once a beautiful area, this is many years ago. Again, not going to age myself. I promised I wasn't going to do that. I realized that they had cut down all these trees and they were logging, and what was once a hiking path was now a logging road. And I didn't like it. It didn't sit well. So from there, I was like, you know what? I want to do something that is going to bring me what I believe I was really good at, is organizing things and executing. And with everything I really did as a child, I was the one that when we were playing in the playground, I was trying to figure out what would be the shortest path to get from point A to point B when everybody was just running around. I was like, I'm not going to run around in circles, but I'll run from here to here because that's the shortest way. And so it dawned on me there that I wanted to be able to do something to give back. And yeah, I just wanted to protect nature, and I just kind of correlated together, and um yeah, it just kind of perfect marriage. So that was like my aha moment, right? Whereas like, this should be regulated. I like walking down this path. Why are they cutting all the trees down?
Okay, okay, that's amazing. And right now, how do you said about the perfect marriage in your job? Like, how do you do to manage like this passion to go for it? Like, how do you combine these two things?
Yeah. So um combining it in my current scenario now is active. It's pretty easy actually, because um a big part of what TRAX does is find efficiencies. Like it's really looking for efficiencies through data, right? And understanding what the data is saying allows you to be effective of what you're doing as an operator, but also have the efficiency to impact the environment. And a good example would be is if you are going in overusage of chemicals or overusage of waste, Our systems like ourselves are able to collect all this data and process it back out to you to provide you with a more sustainable approach of how you should be performing your operations in that building based on whatever the benchmarks or KPIs that you would want to hit. And everything that we do, what gives me that thrill, right? And I just understanding your show, I think this will tie into the Monday Friday aspect, is that I actually found something that I'm passionate about, that Monday and Friday doesn't matter to me, because it's just something that brings me joy, because it brings that environmental sustainability approach. It gives me some of the data that I'm looking for, and it also gives me the operational side to manage as well. So yeah, it's just a perfect blend.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so I want to go to another different topic for the
Yeah.
conversation to make a little twist, because the other time we were talking, you talk about entrepreneurship and what people is not telling about entrepreneurship.
Oh,
And this is about your podcast. So I want to get deep into this topic because I think many people are in their works and maybe they have also a passion, but they don't know how to combine their works and passion, or they are willing to do like a startup or being an entrepreneur, but maybe they are too scared to jump there, or they jump but they left everything and now they are like, okay, entrepreneurship is the worst, or maybe they get into the entrepreneurship world and they just nail it and do it really well. Like there are many scenarios, but yes, I wanted to tell to ask you about a little bit about your podcast and this path of entrepreneurship.
yeah. So I'll start with I'll start with just kind of my experience and kind of the entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship a lot of times gets not looked at. It's not the sexy term, right? On it. But I'll go into that and then I'll go into the podcast afterwards.
Okay.
The description of it, because it kind of ties into that. Wow. So one of the biggest things that I will say is that when you're going into, like anything in life, if you're going to go into something, just ensure that you're going into something with the intent of it's something that you're passionate about. And if the passion's not fully there yet, at least understanding it and the interest is there. So that maybe the interest then becomes a passion. And you know, my passion is being up in the air, right? I really think that it's my way of disconnecting from the world, is just being in the air. That doesn't mean I'm gonna become a pilot, right? Like, and then all of a sudden start an airline. Like that's just not like, yeah, I may become a pilot, it'd be a hobby aspect of it, but connecting the dots, right? And so I think from an entrepreneur's standpoint, um, it's scary. It really is, and I think now it's even a little bit more scary because of false narratives that sometimes are out there, right? You go on Instagram and then you have somebody telling you that, hey, I have the cheapest way of making $1 million and X, Y, and Z, and forget $1 million. When you own a company, those are not things that you're thinking of. A big thing that you're thinking of is, how am I going to cover payroll, or how am I going to, how much more can I do of this, right? And so being an entrepreneur, um, there is a lot of risk, right? But with that risk comes reward, right? And so I always tell entrepreneurs and that take it one step at a time, understand what your strengths are as an individual, understand what your strengths are going to be from an organization, and then tie those things in together. Once you understand that, then understand your weaknesses. For myself, if I look at spreadsheets with numbers and financial statements, it's like pulling hair, like to get me to even sit in that meeting, right? Because it's not something I'm passionate about. But that's why you surround yourself with very intelligent people. And as an entrepreneur, a lot of times you feel that you have to be the smartest person in the room, or you
Yeah.
have to have the answers to everything. And it's okay not to know the answers. That's why you build a network. You build a network of other entrepreneurs, surrounding yourself with people that share the same values and passions that you have becomes a very strong core foundation for any entrepreneur. And I always joke and say, if the inventors of some of the biggest companies out there, the Amazons, the Teslas, and all these other firms that are out there, I'm a history buff, a U.S. history buff, and just a big buff in general when it comes to history. And I've followed a lot of individuals like Howard Schultz from Starbucks, or Henry Ford, or Andrew Carnegie, to go further back. I'm not that old, by the way, to go that back, but they all had a lot of things in common. They were very, very driven. They were very, very passionate. But one thing that we've learned from experiences of those type of entrepreneurs is that they really, really managed in a very complex, their principles of management were way different than what today's market is. And what I mean by that is, being an entrepreneur in today's world, you can't be like Andrew Carnegie was, right? A lot of times that was a very authority-based type management principles. Um, people were just designed to work. There was no other values associated with that. And as society has changed, as it should have, and people are no longer viewed that way, right? And so the work environment changed, the ecosystem changed, so did leadership, so does entrepreneurship when it comes to that. Um, I like to say most people can just go to a bank and get a loan and start a business, but really taking the time to understand what you're starting, building that out and building that foundation starts to mitigate that risk, and also starts to mitigate that fear. Because if you don't take that first step, you'll never be an entrepreneur. You would just be a person with great ideas that never came to fruition. Second part to that is the entrepreneur. And I have a lot of clients that we deal with at Mind and Social, but a lot of, again, just being part of the TRAX in the previous experience, I've met a lot of successful business owners. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs that they couldn't have done it without their partner who is an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur being a risk avert person, right? They're the person that's going to go and help execute these things, but they're probably not going to be the person that's going to, cash out their entire life savings and start a business. But they will be the ones that will be there side by side with an entrepreneur to ensure that things are executed. So really, I've always said, if you're looking to start a business, find people that you can surround yourself with to help. And that doesn't just come from advice. That comes from a sanity check, right? As like some of my industry friends that I would say, man, I can't wait till Thursday to grab that glass of wine with a round table of friends, right? And maybe half the time it's a work conversation, the other half time is what's going on in your world, right? Having that equal balance as an entrepreneur is very important. We run into it a lot at Mind and Social, where we hear entrepreneurs, and by time they come to get help, they're exhausted. They're burnt out. They're the marketing department, they're the sales department, they're the CFO, they're putting on a hat depending on the time of day, they're switching hats. I think building a strong foundation and building a strong, not only a foundation for the business, but a foundation for yourself, right? And so doing things, as we will discuss later in this podcast, that allow you to stop, breathe, and take a moment for yourself, because you can't be a good entrepreneur if yourself is not healthy or happy as well. So really focusing on those things, and then how that ties into the business, it would flow naturally. And the last thing I would say that I wanted to bring up was, don't be afraid to fail. And I don't even like to use the word fail. It tends to connect with people. But really, life's about challenges, and challenges will always be thrown at you. So when you start a business, as you would be in school or as your normal day-to-day life, you're going to be thrown challenges. it's not necessary that the challenges are going to be detrimental, right? Some of them are, some of them are not. But it's how you react to those and what is your action from there. And so what I tell my team is that I do not believe in failure. I believe in the fact that something didn't go as planned and you learned from that. And what can you do to mitigate that in the future? So I personally, if we're going to just stay on the topic, if we're going to stay on the word failure, I like failure. I think failure means that you actually took a chance and you tried and you try and try again, aspect of it. Don't keep trying in the same result. I mean, that then goes into insanity, right? Like
Yes,
that's like,
that's you being
but
stubborn.
yeah, absolutely. But definitely learn from it. And sometimes, I mean, in my career, I have done things where it just didn't pan out how I envisioned it. Um, doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea. It could be a lot of things. Maybe it wasn't the right moment for that. Maybe it wasn't the right approach. Maybe I was not talking to the right people on there. But understanding why it's not working, building it up, just like you would journal. I would journal things that didn't work out and then try to analyze it of why it didn't work out. Sometimes it's not the right place, but I can't tell you how many successful things that personally myself has done through going back into my journal of things that didn't work out and retrying it again, but now with new knowledge, new partnerships, new friendships, new ways of doing things. Or you know what, maybe the world's not ready for this and it previously wasn't, right? You know, when if 25 years ago you told me we're going to have a phone that's going to control your camera, your phone, your TV, and everything, I would tell you you're absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
Now, if you were to tell me, hey, most people can't even live with their iPhone without their iPhone or their Android device. So again, it's a time and place, and you got to be able to time those things as an entrepreneur.
that's amazing. And I really love what you said about failure, because for me, failure is not to try.
Mhm.
Failure is to stay on your thoughts and with your wishes, and that's it. If you don't take action, for me, that's failure. To not take action. So
Yeah, my mom once told me this, and I'm going to try my Spanish here for a second just to make sure.
okay, go for
So
it.
my mom once said to me, cuando una cosa no va como está planeado, coge el momento y toma un vaso de vino. Y cuando se acabe el vaso de vino, you shouldn't be thinking about it anymore. So in translation, that failure, whatever you did that didn't work the way you thought, write it down, have a glass of wine. And by the time you're done that glass of wine, you've moved on to the next thing. Because you can't sit there and ponder on things that didn't go your way or didn't work out. Life's too short and business runs way too fast. And so just move on to the next thing and keep going and keep chipping away and eventually you'll hit success and 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 it will come out positive on the other side.
That's really true. But your Spanish is really great.
Yeah, it is at times. It is. I try. I try.
Okay. Yes, another thing that resonates a lot with me, it's to find the right people. So as you said, like for example, me, I used to think that I should do everything alone. And when I was working, I wanted to yes, to be the best, and yes, to exceed my professional career. But I was working alone, and I was saying like, yes, I'm going to be selfish with my knowledge, and I'm going yes, to work only for my goals. But then I realized that that was not the way, that I
Mhm.
needed like to share all my knowledge, to work with the other people, to don't be selfish with my knowledge, and yes, and that was the way that I exceed my professional career, and I get to be promoted in just 3 months. And so I totally agree regarding that you don't have to do everything alone. You will have to find the right people and to find community. It's a really good thing to be supported and to exceed more quickly, and yes, to get where you want to go. So what will be like these advices you can give to people to get on the community they want to be, or find the right people? Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're absolutely, you're spot on. And one of the things that is the biggest misconception in business, and I spoke maybe like 2 years ago on a panel that it was about aviation, and they were talking about, management and whatnot. And I'm not going to say which airport or which person, but one of the things they had said, it was like the biggest challenges is in today's world is managing of people.
Yes.
And um I have a different perspective of it. I think that management styles need to adapt to what society is doing, right? And as society moves in a certain path, so does your workforce, right? And so here in the United States, our workforce is a major gap between um, individuals that are now retiring and then people that are coming into the workforce. And I'm just going to use hypothetical names, but Patrick retiring and Patrick coming from fresh out of college are way two different types of people, two different types of mindsets, two different types of leadership styles that are required, and expectations.
Yes.
This person maybe just want to go to work and do their job. This person I may have to talk about their cat and their dog for 20 minutes aspect of it, right? It's like they want to get to know, they want to have a voice, and they want to be part of a team. This person here at this age may just want to do what they want to do and leave because that was the generational way of how work was perceived, right? And how work was done. And so I think realistically, when I look at where we are and how to manage, I think that again, going back to the misconception, is that being on top or being an entrepreneur, an owner, is a lonely thing. And that is the biggest misconception. I push back on that all the time. It's if that's the mindset that is out there, then that is an unhealthy mindset,
Yes.
right? It's like being and you're in Madrid. So it's like playing for Real Madrid and being you're the striker. There's no defense, there's no nothing, you're just a striker, right? And not everyone will be Cristiano Ronaldo, right? Not everyone can be that, but he also needs an entire team around him to perform. And everyone needs to do what they're supposed to do. So I think realistically, when you're an entrepreneur or just any type of leadership, surround yourself with people that bring the same values, that share those values as yours. Goals, values, way of life. It doesn't mean you isolate other individuals in your life, right? I have friends that are not business owners that, their passion is hiking. Their passion is snowboarding. And they have their own ways of doing things, but that's great. You want an ecosystem of diversity of friendships, diversity of people, but it's nice to know that it's okay to go to another business that you're friends with and ask for advice. Hey, I'm trying to penetrate this aviation market. I know you guys have a heavy customer base there. It's like, what's your advice? And vice versa. Hey, I know you guys are very good at, hospitals and healthcare. Can you help us, guide us on which way it is? Surrounding yourself people that share that and can share stories, because a lot of times what I've realized over through leadership summits and things that I attend, we all have the same problems, but everyone is too scared to talk about it because everyone translates that as a sign of weakness. And what it should be is the narrative should be switched. It's a sign of strength to be able to talk about your issues that not only yourself is having, but also to your business, and sharing that with other people, because you'll be surprised if someone's like, oh my gosh, that happened to me last year, or I'm going through the same thing aspect of it. Creating that foundation is what I previously had said. That's all part of that foundation, really finding someone that you connect with, and working together in parallel. I think that's very critical and important to be able to balance that. So it's not lonely at the top. So people that think it's lonely at the top, that's because you've allowed yourself to be lonely at the top. surround yourself with people at the top, right? And so I tell all of my clients that I work with is, when you're sitting at the top of the mountain, right? It's not one chair. It's a giant boardroom full of people with you. And so all of those people were there to support you along the way, either directly or indirectly. It's for you to define what that looks like.
Okay, that's amazing. Yes, I think there is like a belief, and I have talked with many entrepreneurs, and they have told me like, this path is really alone.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
really lonely, and I think it's something we have to switch from our minds, because
Yeah. Yeah. And social
it shouldn't
media,
be.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And social media sometimes has, that's why it's a beautiful thing. And for marketing and stuff, it's amazing, right? I mean, we have an amazing marketing team on our side. And so I don't want to rain on their parade, but everything that they tell me, it's and the analytics and all these things, it's amazing. But you hear so much wrong information at times, and wrong, advice that I personally would not take. And yeah, I just, the other day I was on Instagram and there was somebody there that was saying, the way you succeed is that you get up in the morning, and my routine is I get up in the morning and I'm up at 4 in the morning and I'm going to do a 7-mile run, and then I'm going to come to my house, and then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to brainstorm all of my ideas, and then I'm going to answer emails, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Okay. Uh, I get it, but I'm not going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go for a 7-mile run. People have lives, right? What if you have kids? Like, you're going to really sit there and journal at 6 in the morning while you got to get your kids ready to go to school? Like, what it creates is, it creates a perception of isolation.
Yes.
It creates that you can't have anything outside of work. You have to be focused. You have to be, I'm just gonna follow what this gentleman was saying in his, like, you have to be bench pressing and be ripped, and you have to do this and you have to do that, and it's like, no, you have to be healthy. That's not even an entrepreneur thing. You should just be healthy, and period. And health is a huge aspect of success. I do believe that. I do believe that being healthy, both physically and mentally, allow you to be an entrepreneur, because that's part of that foundation, right? That's another pillar of that foundation. But again, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I don't know if you get up at 4 o'clock in the
No.
morning to go for a run. I'm up at 4 in the morning because I got to get on a plane. So yeah, I am running to the gate where I got to get on a plane. But getting up and doing all this craziness, that's just propaganda, advertising, and things like that. But what happens is that's very dangerous, because an entrepreneur who's just coming into the world of becoming an entrepreneur in the world of business, some of this information is misleading, which it creates false impressions and false expectations that people think that that's the only way you're going to do this. And that's not fact. If you're opening a yoga studio, you don't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and run for 7 miles. Like, it's just like that. The correlation to that doesn't even add up, unless you're training for something and you're passionate about running, right? Maybe that is your outlet. You're going to get up
Yes.
at morning, and that is your outlet to go do. But to tell someone that this is the routine you need to do, and this is the reason why, I have a successful business now. You have a successful business because you had an idea, you had a vision, you executed, and then it paid off on the other side. But getting up at 4 in the morning, if that's the case, looking out my window, then there's nobody successful around me, because there's nobody running at 4 o'clock in the morning where I live. So, but yeah, I think just being careful to that, and then again, having those experiences, like conversations like this, right? Understanding, like, oh, okay, that seems interesting, and conversations we've had in the past, about being passionate about traveling, being passionate about not just staying in one place at once, right? Seeing the world, right? The business environment has changed so much that, as long as you have a computer and internet, you're connected to the world. You can do what you need to
You're
do
good.
from where,
Yes.
aspect of it. So definitely, I think you're going to see a lot of more entrepreneurs that are really focusing in on their passions. And I'm excited to see where business is going to go in the next 20 years on this wave of how entrepreneurs are coming out. The last thing I will say, because I just had this conversation with someone too, is being an entrepreneur, be yourself. Like, just be yourself. like me, I hate dress shoes. I'm known in the industry for wearing, I can wear a suit, I can wear a sports coat, but one thing I will always have a pair of Jordans or a pair of nice sneakers. It's just who I've been for the past decades that I've been doing business. It's very rare you'll see me in dress shoes, but the perception is not who Patrick is because of his shoes. It's all what's in here. It's what I'm going to be able to provide. So I think as the business landscape changes, so do expectations. You know, I remember when I got my first job, my mom was like, your tie's not straight. You got to do this. You got to do that. Now I go and I'm blessed enough to be able to go and propose a sale of $1 million deal. I don't think I've tied. I think the last tie I actually wore was at a wedding. And I don't think I even stood on too long, right? And so I think even the landscape, all these perceptions, all these things that we're told that, you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way. No, you just have to be you. And that's it. Just be you and love who you are. And that will feed into what your business is. Because again, you hear all the time, and there's a couple of YouTube videos where someone's like, oh yeah, 9 to 5, they're wearing a tie. And then, for at 5:05 in the car, right? They created a reel and they're taking their tie off and they're listening to a different type of music and whatnot. Nah, just be yourself, right? Be yourself, be respectful, and understand your surroundings.
Yes, that is totally true. And I think that nowadays the thing of a successful entrepreneur, like one important factor is that they are authentic. They are being themselves, and that's the thing that it's like like standing out from the other many people that want to be entrepreneurs. And I think another factor to add to that, it's vulnerability. The thing that you said, like, let's talk about the ugly truth about entrepreneurship, or let's talk about the journey, the path. It's not always like I get to the top and I raised this amount of money. Like, how did you raise that? Like, tell us about the bad days, the good days, like everything.
Right. It's like, so the best way to think of it in that sense is like, if I found a way to raise money from VCs or different ways, why wouldn't I share that with other friends in the industry that are friends of mine, right? A true friend, a true business partner is going to want to help no matter what, right? We're on two separate lanes, of businesses. If I found a way of how to do something that's more efficient, yeah, I should share that with people. I want other people to succeed. I don't want to be the only one succeeding and all my other friends are not succeeding. Like, I want all of us to succeed. And regardless of the fact, that's just, I think, a way how society should view things. We're only successful if we're all successful. Like, it's just that plain and simple, right? And so reaching out and to be vulnerable, I can't tell you how many meetings I've had with individuals where immediately I usually stop presentations with them and say, it's okay to be vulnerable, because you can even see it in their business decks, how conservative they are on feeling that they can't expose certain risk. When you're in that world of getting investment funds, they already know the risk. They've already done the R&D on you. They know the industry, they know the market. And so whatever fluff you're going to put, they're going to read right through it, because as soon as you get to the next round, the underwriter shows up now. And now they're really going to start digging in. So you might as well get out of that shell and be vulnerable in a sense of being able to be honest, truthful, and explain yourself. Because you know what? The person on the other side of that table who may be a VC or whatnot, maybe he's already done this and has experienced it and can guide you through that process of it. So yeah, it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yes.
You should be vulnerable. Like I tell everyone, right? On camera, 9 to 5 would be great. But nobody knows what goes on behind the scenes to start a business and run it. And that was part of the podcast. We want people to be honest. Be honest with the business. Like, this is, sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not great. And it's okay to be male or female and just express your frustration out. I always joke, right? With like, I tell my son this, is like, it's okay to be a guy and cry. Like, it's okay to let out emotions in both personal and business, right? If you're holding all this stuff in, eventually you're gonna, right? And you're not gonna think straight. Irrational decisions are made, emotional decisions are made versus logical decisions. And so I tell people, including my kids, It's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay that dad cries. It's okay that you cry. It's completely fine, right? Because you need to get that out. You need to express that. And there's times it's like, and I'm sure you've gone through this, right? You do a meeting and you're like in the meeting and you're like, you finally exhale, right? And then you're like, right? And then you think about the meeting. Did I do it right? Did I say this right? No, it's okay. It's okay to bring vulnerability. You should be vulnerable. It's like if you're not vulnerable about things in life or in business, then you're very risk avert. And then you're living it goes back to that what we said earlier about feeling isolated or
Yeah,
feeling or not because you didn't let out the vulnerability in business.
totally. That reminds me a meeting I had with my ex-boss, and she cried. She was
Mhm.
like expressing vulnerability, and she was like, I need your help because this and that, and she cried.
Right.
And I don't think that was weakness. Like, from that moment I was like, okay, she is a good leader. Like,
Yeah, and that is a good leader. And that's the difference between someone that you gain so much respect for that they were able to be so vulnerable in front of you that the person who's on the other side seeing the vulnerability, that makes you even more passionate to want to get to know this person, regardless if you're still at that employer or not. You have built a level of trust and connection with this individual that they were safe enough to feel vulnerable with you. And that's usually the how you create friendships, long-term business friendships. Now, I had a CEO that I worked for. Um, Again, I don't like to oust people, but a CEO that I worked for where I knew there was a problem, and I was just waiting for them to tell me. Right? Being and once they find and again, I never forget the day they told me. It seems like a lot of things that happen to me are around wine, and that was a that's a coincidence. I don't know, and usually red wine too. And We had a discussion, and they finally came out and said, "I have a problem, and we need to find a way from a business to solve it." And it was so brave of an entrepreneur, a CEO, to come out and expose and say, we have a situation and we need to find resolution to it." And what this individual didn't know is that I was already aware of the problem. So by the time she finished her sentence and got it all out, which I'm sure it was weight off their shoulders,
of course.
um, I already had the plan because I knew it was just a matter of time till the conversation was going to happen. So I already have formulated a plan with my team to execute this. So by being vulnerable and explaining the real issues, she was able to immediately get it resolved
Yeah.
because of that. And this other business that I was involved in, she now sold the business and she's moved on to other projects. And it was highly successful. And it was something very small. It was just a shift of operations that we had to do. But she was carrying this weight for 6 months. And it was just a simple decision that had to be made. And then it was executed. So vulnerability, definitely there. You should definitely, it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yes, yes, it's the best thing. Okay, so I have like a hypothetical case.
Okay.
So let's imagine like you have to start like all over, and you are going to create your own company, and you don't have like any community, you don't
Mhm.
have friends that are in these spaces. What would you do first? How you will start?
Yeah, yeah. I would say pause and reflect on what you're trying to do and prepare yourself for the journey you're about to do, right? Because once you start that journey, you've started, right? And so you're moving forward, right? So the best way to think of it is like you're not going to go and hike Everest and then halfway be like, you know what? I forgot my other jacket. I'm going to go down. You know, like be prepared, right? Prepare yourself mentally, prepare yourself spiritually, prepare yourself in any which way that you do that prepares you to take on an endeavor. Um, Once you do that, immediately again, so I in full disclosure, I did do a lot of sales. So, and I always tell all my sales reps and team members, I say, number one thing that you never should ever stop doing is selling and networking. Find people in wherever you are that have started businesses, maybe not even the same type business, but businesses in whatever market you're in, and whatever side, wherever in the world you're in, because the way business may be done in, I'll use Spain because that's where you are,
Yes.
and New Hampshire are probably two different things, right? Two different ways of it.
Totally.
Getting to know geographically, regulations, rules, ways. Sometimes there's ways of getting loans different than there is other ways. Getting to know your environment, I guess is what I'm saying. And surrounding yourself with experts. Never stop. Maybe join you know, a gym. Join something success. I always tell people all the time. I was like, one thing that I did when I in my previous experiences that I joined the gym, but I joined the gym right next to a Microsoft and Google offices.
Oh,
And why did I do
wow.
that? I did that on purpose
Of
because
course.
everybody at those offices were going to go and work on at those gyms, meaning I was going to have eventually conversations with people that were going to guide me in a different direction. So just thinking outside the box, you're surrounded by people that want to help you. You just haven't met these people yet. And so really working through that, building that foundation, continuously networking, continuously putting things out. Now, what I will say in today's world, it's a little bit easier to do things because you can continuously utilize certain aspects. So if you're starting a business, start a buzz about the business, right? Start creating, is there a market for me locally for this? Or is this going to be more of a e-commerce type business? Or is this going to be a business that's going to be done globally, right? And so something like Mine and Social, I could have clients in Madrid, I can have clients in Turkey, I can have clients in that are in Atlanta that are just going to come to our office, right, and chat with us on it. So, but if you have a niche market, right, like if you start a yoga studio, are you really going to make a yoga studio right next to 16 other studios? You know, probably not, right? And so getting to understand that, but if you try to do it, my number one advice would be is getting to know yourself, preparing yourself for the journey. That's the most important part. And then two, start connecting the dots of getting connected with the local business environment, getting understanding what the landscape looks like, and then starting from there. And you don't need to go for a run at 4 in the morning. Sorry, I'm so stuck on that one. About 4 runs at 4 in the morning. But that's what I would say. And if I could do it all over again, I think I would have saved a lot of time, and I don't want to say wasted energy, but a lot of unnecessary energy on things that I know now that there was a shorter pathway to get to it, right? Instead of, not that you shouldn't be continuously educating yourself in knowledge, but it's like reading a, it's like reading a, you know, learning a new language. Are you really going to sit there and read the whole book? Or does it make sense to read the book in parallel with getting to know people who are going to talk to you in that language? Kind of like my Spanish, right? So, like mi mamá siempre me dice, si no lo usa, lo va a perder. So, piensa usándolo,
Yes.
right? And so the same
If
thing,
you don't
right?
go to action, yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But that's what I would say. That's my advice. Is definitely find your way to connect yourself with the local business environment, business landscape, and then go from there.
I love that. I love that advice. And regarding the thing about waking up at 4 a.m., that is what I've been studying these 2 years, because I was in a hyper growth startup,
Mhm.
and also I'm working like many hours a day, and I love it. But I also wanted to be in perfect health and mentally health, and there it's this thing called biohacking, and there are like 5 minutes techniques that you can use in your day, as breathing, as 5 minute meditation, as pauses you can do in your day, that can be equal or more effective than getting up at 4
Absolutely.
a.m. in the morning and run a marathon and then start your day, right?
Yeah. So I always tell people all the time, right? So um, I call them breathing moments, right? But sometimes, and I practice this, so I will, like, I'll speak from personal experience, is that in the world that I'm in, when I am finally not traveling, and I'm in front of my computer, I tend to as a lot of us are guilty, is that you lose track of time and you realize that you're sitting in front of your computer for 3 hours and you didn't realize 3 hours went by because you're so engulfed with what you're doing. Um, but it is very important to take time for yourself. It is very important. That email can wait 15 minutes if you just go and have a quiet moment for 10 minutes. Reground yourself, clear your mind, reset. We're humans, we're not robots, right? And so um in my case, I like to do a lot of walking. Not at 4 in the morning, but I like to do a lot of walking. And part of that in it's very important that you brought that up too, because that is very critical for us, right? It's not getting in the car and whatever it is that brings that short one-to-one time with yourself, right? But it's very important. It's very important to be able to do that. I recently was just at a client's office, corporate office buildings, and they created these rooms called quiet rooms. And literally, it was for employees to get up, go to the room, and they'll reserve that room for 15 minutes. And the only thing in that room was just a simple yoga mat and some battery powered candles. And that's all. It was just a dark room. And you literally went in there and you had 15 minutes to yourself, just quiet, completely blocked off from the outside world. And it was very critical. It was very interesting to hear and see how many people were using that room. And I was like, that's amazing. And then I realized that what the nature of what this company does is very high stress. Like it's go, 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 go. And so they allow their employees to use that room as much as possible and they encourage it. And so I think that, yeah, people taking time for themselves is very, very important. And I think in anything in life, right? I mean, I can tell you, like, if I go to Target and it's just so chaotic, and I'm an extrovert, I talk a lot. Um, it's exhausting, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I need 5 minutes. How many of us have gone shopping and then get in the car and you like sit there and you take a 2 minute breather on it? You're naturally doing it without knowing. You're not aware that you actually are doing it. So to be aware that you're doing it is very important. And I think that's absolutely a necessity for sure.
I love that word, to be aware of what you're doing. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we go for a walk and we start thinking, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And you're like full of thoughts and it's
I
not.
am so guilty of that.
Yes, but yes, me too. But right now, I'm thinking like, okay, let's ground myself and be aware of the city I am, be aware of the tree, be aware of the sun, of the moon, whatever it is, because right now I cannot do anything regarding my to-do list. So
Yes.
take that
And it's
5 minutes to be aware.
yeah, absolutely. And you're so spot on. This is actually something that I know you've met Tracy, so it's
Yes.
I'll just call her out on this one. I never forget one day I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go on a hike for like." It was like midday. I was like, "I'm gonna go on a 2 hour hike. It's just a local trail around where I live." And then 30 minutes later, I called her. I was like, "Hey, I have an idea," and she actually told me, "I don't want to hear your idea right now." And I was like, "But no, it's a good idea." And she's like, "No, I'm sure it is."
Listen
She's
to
like,
me, it's a
"But
good
you
idea.
told me that you were going on a hike. Why are you calling me?" And I was like, "Well, I'm hiking." And she's like, "I'll talk to you later." And she ended the conversation. And
That's a really good part.
it dawned on me where it's like the first 30 minutes, I don't think there could have been a mountain lion walking behind me. And I was so still in my own thoughts and not enjoying the surroundings and actually disconnecting. And she indirectly but directly told me, don't call me when you're on these hikes because or on these walks because it's your time. It's a time for you and focus on you. And so I never called her again after that, by the way. I let her, I waited like 2 or 3 days and then told her my idea. But then afterwards I started to understand from there. But yeah, absolutely. You should definitely spend time for yourself.
You wrote your idea down and waited.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, Patrick, I would love to keep chatting with you. It is amazing. I think we have many things to talk about, but
Yeah, absolutely. I
respect
can
your time. I will go for the final questions. I think we have many clues for these final questions, but I wanted to ask you an advice you can give for someone that it's hating Mondays and is waiting to
mm,
be Friday.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you basically, and that's a great in question, because if you think of everything we just talked about, right? And it just kind of naturally flows into it, is that if you really are doing something that you Monday comes and you cannot wait for Friday to get here, right? Unless you're going on a vacation or something, right? And, like if it's Monday and I'm gonna go to
Yeah,
Madrid, see
that's
Real
true.
Madrid or El Clasico, then you bet you're behind. I'm focusing on Friday, right?
Yes, yes.
But a day to day, if you find yourself in that situation, you're probably in something what I call a business hamster wheel, where you're just continuously or just following processes because that's just what you're following. There's no passion there. There's no anything really. And the best way to think of it is, you know, I'll use my favorite soccer player, like Messi, right? You really think Messi gets up on Monday and is like, oh, I can't wait for Friday. Yeah, maybe if he was playing like Cristiano Ronaldo or something, like, he's like, I can't wait to beat this guy, right?
Yes.
As right from a competitive, but no, it's because he's found something that he's passionate about. So for me, myself, I view Monday like Friday. I don't, there's no difference for me because everything from start to that day. And again, being an entrepreneur, we all know that sometimes we gotta do stuff on Saturdays and Sundays too. Like doesn't it doesn't end there, but that's okay. And in moderation, right? It's okay to in moderation and deal with those things. Um, but really it's just finding something that you're really passionate about. And if you are in a situation like that, some self-reflection of how you're in a situation. Is it maybe a shift of mindset? Are you interested in what you're doing? So it's not even just being an entrepreneur. If you are a high stress, high caliber type worker, do self-reflection. Does it make sense to your point? Maybe incorporating quiet time into your day, maybe incorporating practices that are going to allow you to reground yourself in that. Maybe that would change the mindset and perception of, gosh, I cannot wait till it's Friday, right? Approach. And if it all fails, we're not we're not captured, right? We can go ahead and change careers. People do it all the time, change businesses.
It's
You
never too
could
late.
correct. You could be uh in data like I am, right? And then, I did my part, did my thing, and now I'm gonna open a yoga studio. Not that I'm opening a yoga studio, I promise.
I
I'm not
was
doing
getting excited.
that. But people change and dreams change and whatnot. And so if you are in that kind of hamster wheel approach, ask yourself first, understand that you're in the hamster wheel, understanding you're unhappy, and then find a ways to bring joy and happiness and passion back that you're not thinking those things.
Amazing. And the other one regarding the 4 a.m. club, what is like this good practice that you do to be like grounded and not
Yeah,
that stressed?
yeah. You know, I I would say something that some people would not agree with, but when I was younger in my career, um, I would say it would be I would have a different answer, right? Surround yourself with people who run all that stuff. We understand that part of it.
Yes.
I would say for myself, previously it was like, oh, my office was here. I'm gonna go have happy hour with friends and whatnot. And then you don't realize that what that turns into is not what you think it's turning out to, right? And so drinking that glass of wine is great, but if that's a consistent thing, I mean, you are putting in a toxin into your body, right? I'm at that point. And so what I learned is that um, for me, it's walking. And it doesn't matter where I'm at. I can be in, I mean, I was just talking to you the other day. I was in downtown Chicago and for some reason I off story, but I decided to bring gym shorts, and I was like, "Well, I can't go outside; it's 5 degrees out." And so, like, I don't know what I was thinking
But
there.
in Madrid here, there is winter and people go in shorts for a run.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, and I was just like, "Okay, well, I'm not gonna do that." But sometimes, a lot of times, what I like to do is walk. I like to walk. I like to while I'm walking, I like to listen to certain types of music. Some usually my preference is like a jazz or a soft jazz or something in that nature. and I reground myself. And the number one thing I do when I finish my walk, I don't run back to my computer. I actually then take another 5 minutes to transition myself from that state that I was in of walking to the state of doing my of getting back to work or getting back to what I was working on whatever that might have been. And part of that stuff is that's what we talk about in the podcast, the Layover podcast. We really home in on the true nitty and gritty of business.
Yes.
And I think we talked last time when you're asking me like, "Hey Pat, I gotta ask you like, why is it called the Layover?" Right? And I was like, "Well, it's not a show about aviation, even though we do a lot of business in aviation. I have a lot of friends in aviation. The whole part of the podcast was exactly what we just did here, right? It's a conversation with other business owners and other successful people. You don't need to be a business owner to measure success, right? It's just journeys. What are people's journeys, right? What are the journey? What are the good things you do? What are the bad things that have happened? What's the real story? Tell me the real story. I don't want to hear the fluff. I want to hear, you know, shit, I made a bad decision and I drained half of our capital, right? And whatnot. Like, I want to hear those stories. I want to hear the times where things didn't work out for you and how did you overcome that? And more importantly, how did that make you feel? Right? Like, you maybe had a smile in the boardroom, but when you're in a shower, you probably were crying. That's okay. That's completely okay. But you know what? You learned and you moved on from there. So the Layover podcast is a foundation and a safe place for people to be raw about what it takes to start a business and be successful. And then people's journeys. Not everyone's journey is the same. When we first started talking, you're in Colombia,
Yes.
and then you were in Barcelona, and then now you're in Madrid, right? And so that's a journey, that's a story. There's a story for that, right? And so the podcast is designed to tell those stories, and I'm beyond happy that you've agreed to come on, and we cannot wait to have you as a guest on our podcast, so you can definitely share your story and all your passions and dreams and things and whatnot with the world.
Thank you. For sure. I will be there. Amazing. And last, a book or podcast you recommend to people.
Well, your podcast, right? I'll start there.
Of course. That's
uh,
the first one.
yeah. You didn't even have to edit it. I'll just tell you, it's that one.
Yes.
So you know what? I am. I don't like self-help books. I don't like them. I think that if you read just self-help books, you're not diversifying your perspective of things. I'm a huge believer in that we learn from the past. And so I love history. I read a lot of history because within those books and those lines, they're telling you what not to do, either indirectly or what, because you learn from people. You learn things of what to do, what not to do. And so we paved the road forward by understanding of what was previously done through history. So I love history. Anything history. Um, I never forget my youngest daughter was going through my books once, and she asked me, she said, "Why do you have so many books about Abraham Lincoln? Like, how much can you tell of a story?" And I was like, "Well, it's perspectives for different things that he done." So yes, I do have like 15 books of like just one a person, but I've done that with Andrew Carnegie. He's actually one of my people that I look up to from a business standpoint on how we catered business. So I would say I wouldn't give you one book, but I would say diversify your book, right? It's okay to read a business book, but don't read 70 business books. Read a business book. You know what? Go ahead and read Harry Potter, right where you're at it, right? Read whatever you're
Love
gonna bring.
story, whatever you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, absolutely. Read what brings passion to you too, right? I don't know about you, but I don't want to sit all day and talk about business, then go and have cocktails and talk about business, and then go home and read a book about business. I don't want to do that, right? And so, yeah, I would say anything that for myself, if you're a business owner, definitely pick up a couple of historical books, a couple of biographies, memoirs, get to know what other people did, because people are telling their stories, and those memoirs and biographies are written for a reason. They're not just written so you can be like, you know, Taylor Swift is amazing, right? We all know that she's amazing, right? But getting to know who she is, and so again, she's probably already writing a book, to be honest with you, but getting an understanding of her mindset and what triggers her, what gets her going, her vulnerability put on pages gives us the inner knowledge to understand what worked for her. So she's having a conversation with you, or they're having a conversation with you through their books, and being able to read that and incorporate that into your life, I think brings joy. So I would say anything with history or memoirs or anything like that. That's my choice.
That's amazing. And yes, I also, well, I watch in Netflix some of these biographies, and I watched this about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's amazing how he reinvents himself, and I learned a lot about all the things
Yeah, and I just recently watched Sly, which is Sylvester.
Also, yes,
That was amazing. Like it just never giving up. Don't care what the rest of the world says. People don't think you can act because you talk a certain way or you look a certain way. And that one thing I took away from Sly is that he never gave up. He said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to write it and I'm going to cast myself into it because I
yes.
know that I'm the only one that can play this role.
I love that part. Like he said, like, okay, no one wants to hire me as an action figure. Okay, I will do my own
Yeah.
and I will be the action figure.
and it worked out for him. And so again, that goes back to what me and you both said earlier: is never give up. Don't ever give up. Just because somebody tells you no doesn't mean it's no. That's just no for one person. And guess what? There's billions of people in this world that would want to hear your idea, and you just got to find that person.
Yes. Love that. Amazing. Patrick, do you have any final thoughts? Do you want to share like your social media with people?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I could do a plug, I would say definitely follow us on social media, the Mind and Social. What we're building there is just a community of entrepreneurs, business leaders, and really there to create a safe space for someone to reach out if they need certain aspects of help, right? So whether that be marketing, advertising, public relations, how to write a contract, or you need a second pair of eyes on a presentation for a market and whatnot. It's a safe place, and I would say definitely go follow us there and check out what we're doing. There's a lot of cool updates that we're going to be doing. And the podcast. I definitely the Layover podcast. Tracy and myself have been working around the clock getting this thing up and running while running other companies too. But it's definitely follow us we're on Instagram, and we are on LinkedIn as well. And we can't wait to have you on. We're beyond excited. I was telling Chelsea, just a quick note is, I was like, well, I wonder if it's in the budget to fly out to Madrid and just do it in person. And she's like, don't get any. She's like, don't get any ideas. I was like, you can take it on the road, and while we're there, we can go to a Real Madrid game, and then we can just add these things together. But no, absolutely. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to plug in both Mind and Social and the Layover podcast. It's something that we talk about passion, and we talked about that multiple times here. The podcast is something that I've always been passionate, and I've always had a deep passion for creating a platform to give people a voice. And it just was the perfect time. And I said, I put it off for many years, and I was like, wait a minute, this is not how I normally do things. Why am I not practicing when I'm preaching? And I said, I'm ordering everything and I'm taking the first step, and then boom, we did it. And so we're continuously doing that. And so I really appreciate you giving me that your platform to be able to plug that in.
No, thanks to you. Amazing. Okay.
Perfect.
Bye, Patrick.
All right, take care.